welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is my first deck tech from Jumpstart 2022. And I am doing a deck tech for Kibo, Uktabi Prince. 2 and a green, Monkey Noble 2/2. Tap, each player creates a colorless artifact token named Banana. With tap, sacrifice this artifact, add red or green, you gain 2 life. When an artifact an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control that's an ape or a monkey, and whenever Kibo attacks, defending player sacrifices an artifact. So I thought this was the most interesting commander from the set. I also think it's going to be the most popular one probably. I don't typically do the most popular commander from a set. I usually like to concentrate on the ones that aren't going to get as much attention, but there's just so many things interesting going on this commander that the ideas were going through my head and I just had to build a deck for it. I already had alluded to the fact that I probably would do so here I am doing it. This is indeed a Gruul commander, as I've stated a few times before. I know a lot of people weren't quite so sure about it. That red pip on your commander means that this is a red and green commander. There's a whole lot of things going on here. You're sort of doing a little bit of a hug theme, right? Because you are giving all of your opponents that token that they can use for mana and also gain life with. Of course, when they sacrifice it, you're going to get a benefit off of it. You can also build around the theme of your opponent sacrificing artifacts. This can be a great commander against any deck that is doing the treasure token theme, obviously, because any deck that is sacrificing a lot of treasure tokens is just going to put a ton of counters on all your apes and monkeys. There's a lot to build around on this commander, so let's get to it. First of all, we got to put some apes and monkeys in this deck, right? We do have a little bit of a tribal theme here. I didn't go super deep with this, but there are some great apes and monkeys that, of course, we're going to throw in this deck, starting with Kogla the Titan Ape and Silverback Elder. These are 2 cards that you could put in pretty much any green deck, and they're going to be fantastic for you. Kogla fights a creature when it enters the battlefield, so we now have creature removal. When it attacks, destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. Pretty fantastic ability that you're always going to want to be using. Also does kind of fit with the theme of what we're doing. Has 1 and a green, return target human you control to owner's hand, and it gains indestructible at the end of turn. That actually is an ability that we can use in this deck. I do have a couple of humans, but there also is a few other options as well, which I will get to. Silverback Elder, recently from Dominator United, is just a phenomenal card in any deck, really, in a commander game. Whenever you cast a creature spell, choose 1, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Again, we're doing that. Artifact and enchantment removal is not going to be an issue in this deck, of course. You can also look at the top 5 cards of your library, put a land card from among them onto the battlefield, tap, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, or you can gain 4 life. So just a great versatile card that's going to be fantastic in any commander game that also happens to be an ape, and we can pile counters on it. I also have Ragavan Nimble Pilfer in this deck, and it is an expensive card, I know, but it really is the best monkey out there by a mile, so it would be silly for me not to include it. I also got Ravenous Baboons and Uktabi Orangutan, which are going to destroy a non-basic land and an artifact, respectively. So just good handy creatures, but also happen to fit the theme of what we are doing. And of course, we can do the Changeling thing as well. I got Mass Vandal in here and Chameleon Colossus. Again, more artifact and enchantment removal. Not going to be an issue in this deck at all. Chameleon Colossus, just a great creature. Has the Changeling, right? So it is every creature type. It means it's an ape and a monkey. So it is going to get a counter on it from our commander's ability. Also has protection from black and 2 green. Chameleon Colossus gets +X until end of turn, where X is its power. And of course, because these are changelings, they are also humans. So that part does work with Kogla. I also threw a Maskwood Nexus in this deck, which is going to give all of our creatures changeling, which again works with the whole human thing on Kogla, but more importantly works with all of the monkey and ape stuff as well. So now all of our creatures are going to get counters on them when our opponents lose an artifact. I only have about 10 apes and monkeys in this deck. I didn't build around that part too much. I didn't want to put a bunch of really bad creatures in this deck. There is a lot of creatures in this deck, though. There's 30. So there's a whole bunch of creatures in this deck that aren't apes or monkeys that with the Maskwood Nexus in play, now they're all going to get counters as well. Also, though, has that 3-tap, create a 2/2 blue shapeshifter creature token with Changeling, so we can create a token that's also going to get those counters on it as well. A couple of those non-monkey creatures that I think work great in the deck: Dustshell Crawler, 1 and a green, Insect 03. When it enters the battlefield, puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and each creature we control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. We're going to have a lot of really big creatures with all these counters on them, including our commander, right? Don't forget our commander is a monkey. It's going to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Giving it trample is going to be great, especially if we want to be attacking with it and using its last ability, forcing our opponents to sacrifice. I think Kodama of the West Tree is a fantastic fit here. Modified creatures you control have trample. Of course, that includes creatures with counters on them. So this is going to ensure that all of our creatures with the counters on them are going to have trample. Also, though, whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So just our commander, if we have these 2 cards in play, every time our opponents sacrifice one of those artifact tokens, put a counter on a commander, it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's going to have trample. When we swing with it, our opponents will have to sacrifice another artifact, put another counter on it, and when it connects, we're going to get to go get a land out of our library. Seems like a great fit. I also have Thundering Reiju, which is fitting the modified theme as well. Whenever Thundering Reiju attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then Thundering Reiju deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of modified creatures you control other than Thundering Reiju. I also threw Hierophant Biotitan in this deck recently from Warhammer 40k. This is a card that I think you could put in any deck that's green, that's dealing with the +1/+1 counter theme. It costs 10 green, but as an additional cost to cast this spell, you may remove any number of +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. This spell costs 2 less to cast for each counter removed this way. So if we have 3 creatures lying around that all have a counter on them, we can remove those 3 counters. Our Hierophant Biotitan will cost 6 less, so it's only going to cost 6 mana, and of course it only gets better from there, and we're going to end up with a 12/12 creature that has Vigilance, Reach, and Ward 2. That's pretty good. Also, can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. So I think that's a fantastic fit in this deck. I'm doing the counters theme here a little bit. I didn't put too much of the +1/+1 counter support in here. Inspiring Call, I think, is a no-brainer here. 2 and a green instant. Draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Those creatures gain indestructible end of turn. So it's board wipe protection, which you're always going to want in any creature-heavy deck. And then on top of that, we're going to get some card draw as well. Having both of those built into one card's fantastic. Also have Doubling Season in here. Again, I just think this is a card you got to have with Kibo, because not only is it doubling the amount of counters you're putting on your creatures, it's also doubling up the amount of tokens you're getting. So when we tap our commander for its ability, we're going to get 2 of those bananas when our opponents only get 1. Of course, we want to be destroying our opponent's artifacts, and luckily for us, every commander game features a ton of artifacts. You know, again, the treasure token theme is really popular in the format right now, but just even mana rocks. Every deck typically has a bunch of mana rocks. So if we can cast a Creeping Corrosion or a Meltdown, 2 cards that I have in this deck, we're going to wipe out a whole bunch of artifacts and then put a whole bunch of +1/+1 counters on all of our apes and monkeys. Molder Slug is going to force our opponents each to sacrifice an artifact on their upkeep, right? At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices an artifact. We have to do it as well, but that's okay. We're going to have a banana token as well that we can sacrifice. You will get to a point where your opponents aren't going to want to sacrifice their banana tokens probably. So now we're going to force their hand. Glissa Sunseeker, also a fantastic fit here. 2 green, legendary creature, elf warrior, 3/2 with first strike. Tap, destroy target artifact if its mana value is equal to the amount of unspent mana you have. So of course, an artifact token is 0 mana value. So as long as we don't have any unspent mana in our mana pool, we can just tap our Glissa to destroy any of those banana tokens. Of course, we're destroying artifacts all the time, so Viridian Revel is absolutely going to be the best fit for this deck. 1 green enchantment. Whenever an artifact is put into opponent's graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. Again, they're not going to want to sacrifice their artifacts when this is in play because we get a card draw off of each of them, but we have so much artifact destruction or forcing them to use those artifacts that it's not really going to matter either way. Fangren Marauder is another great fit here. 5 and a green beast, 5/5. Whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, battlefield, you may gain 5 life. That's our artifacts included. Every artifact on the table, treasure tokens, banana tokens, whatever the case may be, we're going to gain an absolute a ton of life off of this guy. I also threw Ich-Tekik Salvage Splicer in the deck because it is sort of fitting a lot of things that we're doing here. So it enters the battlefield and gives you a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token. None of that is fitting the ape or monkey theme. That's perfectly fine, I think. Whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Ich-Tekik and a +1/+1 counter on each golem you control. So again, even if we just have Ich-Tekik and the golem token we are making, all those artifacts going to the graveyard, ours included again, are going to put counters on these guys. They fit the +1/+1 counter theme, so that's great. On top of that though, it kind of a little bit fits the Maskwood Nexus and Changeling theme as well. So now if I have my Chameleon Colossus in play with Ich-Tekik, that's going to get a counter as well because it's also a golem. If I have my Maskwood Nexus in play, now all my creatures are going to get a +1/+1 counter from my Ich-Tekik as well as from my Kibo, so it all doubles up there. So there's a lot of sort of crossover with creature types in this deck, which is interesting. I also really like the idea of taking advantage of the fact that our opponents are gaining life as well, right? Whenever they sack those banana tokens, they're going to gain 2 life. So Kavu Predator and Punishing Fire I thought were both great fits in the deck. Kavu Predator, again, fitting the +1/+1 counter theme, an absolute perfect fit in this deck, I think. Whenever an opponent gains life, put that many +1/+1 counters on Kavu Predator. So if our opponent sacks that banana token, that's 2 life they're gaining. Our Kavu Predator gets 2 counters on it. So first time they ever do this, it's going to be a 4/4 with trample. Anyone else sacking those tokens gains 2 life, puts 2 more counters on this guy. Punishing Fire, 1 on a red instant, deals 2 damage to any target, but whenever an opponent gains life, you may pay a red. If you do, return it from your graveyard to your hand. So this is just a repeatable damage spell that we're just going to keep getting back over and over and over again. We even can sacrifice our own banana tokens to pay for this ability if we don't have any other mana open. It's kind of nice to just always be having a spell in your hand that can throw 2 damage around. Well of Lost Dreams, because guess what? We're gaining life as well, right? We're making those banana tokens. We're going to sacrifice them. We're going to gain 2 life. And when we do so, we can pay 2 mana and draw 2 cards off of our Well of Lost Dreams. If we don't have the 2 mana, just sacking a banana token will give us 1 mana and we can at the very least draw a card off of our Well of Lost Dreams. So essentially with Well of Lost Dreams, it becomes every banana token you sacrifice, you can draw a card if you want to. Ageless Entity, another great fit, I think, even though it doesn't fit any of the tribal aspect, it fits a lot of the other ones. 3 green, green, elemental, 4/4. Whenever you gain life, put that many +1/+1 counters on Ageless Entity. So now, again, fits the +1/+1 counter theme, and then all those banana tokens that we are sacrificing are going to put 2 counters on our Ageless Entity. I like Trudge Garden here as well. 2 and a green enchantment. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 4/4 green fungus beast creature token with trample. Again, sacrificing our own bananas gives us 1 mana, so we only need 1 other mana to create a 4/4 trampling creature. That seems pretty good. So every banana token we sacrifice only requires 1 more mana to create a 4/4 creature. This seems like a great card to help us close out the game. And of course, our commander has a tap ability, so we got to put 1000-Year Elixir in there. I got Patriarch's Seal as well. We really want our opponents to have those banana tokens to be sacrificing or for us to be destroying, whatever the case may be. We also want them ourselves, right? Again, with the Ageless Entity and with all these other cards, we want to be gaining life and we want to be sacrificing tokens. So both of these cards will allow us to untap our commander so that we can use that ability more than once in a turn. Really, really interesting commander, I think. And again, I think this is probably going to be the most popular from the set. Might be one of the most popular in the entire format, maybe. I don't know. Availability might be an issue here a little bit. I know with the original Jumpstart, there was a little bit of an availability issue with people getting their hands on the cards, so that will play into this a little bit. Nevertheless, it's a super interesting commander, and I think I put together a super interesting, fun deck here. Of course, the deck list is in the description below. Feel free to check it out, but that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.